started. So first, my name is Blythe Kazmierczak. I'll be your moderator for this session today. You are in Building a People-Centric HR breakout session at the Hacking HR Conference. So welcome. We have folks from all over the globe who've joined in already, and I'm sure we'll have some more show up over time. So with that, we're gonna get going with orienting to what we're gonna talk about today. So really, we are excited to talk about this topic. It's certainly a one that has been in a lot of people's minds as we think about how to balance the technology we're using now, and that's part of our work days every day, and the people side or the human side of things. And bringing those two things together is certainly a focus for Hacking HR, as well as just something everybody in the HR community is trying to navigate. So we're going to go, we've got some awesome panelists that I'm going to do a quick round of introductions with, and then we're going to dig into some discussions that are more about the topic in general of people-centric HR and how to build it, as well as some specific examples. So our intent today is really to give you guys some tangible examples of this in practice, as well as just some concepts and frameworks to think about related to the topic. So we're going to try to tackle both of those things. So with that first, my name is Blythe, as I said, and I'm your moderator, and I am out of Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's sunny today in the Midwest of the US, and I run a consulting practice focused on helping HR software and service companies scale. And being close to many of those technology providers, they are trying to help HR people all over the place do that technology implementation in a way that's people-centric. So that's kind of where I'm coming at this. So with that, maybe we'll just go round robin. Damon, you're above my head, so maybe you can go next.
Could you prompt again?
Yeah, Damon, can you go next?
Oh, sure. Sorry, I thought you said Renee.
Oh.
Happy to. So I'm Damon Diener, and I'm the Director of Employee Experience for IBM. And so IBM, we're a very large company, across 180 countries globally. And so, doing employee centricity at scale and finding ways to operationalize it is something that I spend most of my day doing. I lead an employee experience design team. And so we are helping IBM HR really make that cultural transition from being, what our CHRO describes as being optimized for efficiency with all the, HR functions, to really optimizing ourselves for employee experience. And that really takes looking at HR from the employee's point of view in, as opposed from the HR organization or functional view out.
Awesome, thanks, Damon.
No problem.
Braden, do you want to go next?
Sure. So my name is Braden Kelley, and I'm a Director of Innovation and Human-Centric Problem Solving at Oracle. What that really means is that I work with customers or prospective clients in North America across human capital management, across customer experience, across ERP and supply chain management to find and fix wicked problems for that clients are struggling with. And so that thinking and other methodologies, including methods that I've just developed over the course of my work. I've also written a book on innovation called Stoking Your Innovation Bonfire, and a book on change called Charting Change.
Cool. Thanks, Braden. Glad to have you part of this discussion. Omolara, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Lara, Yeku is my name. I'm currently the head of HR for food in Flour Mills, Nigeria, one of the leading manufacturing food company in Nigeria. I currently oversee the day-to-day operation of the human resources here. I oversee about 4,000 plus employees. I'm really passionate about innovation, solving problems, and of course, ensuring that my employees bring their optimal best whole self to work on a daily basis. I'm a transformational coach, really passionate about helping people transform their life and see how they can bring their best ingenuity, strength forward to work. I'm very creative and innovative. That is what has recently led me to design a book called My HR Storybook, using my design thinking expertise, wherein had put together the stories of 56 HR people, leveraging on 3 concepts in the book: the concept of storytelling, the concept of co-creation, and of course the concept of mentoring. The essence of the book is to solve the mentoring gap we have currently, and it's really been amazing. I'm passionate about people, and I'm passionate about ensuring that our people bring their optimal best self to work.
Well, thank you, Lara. I'm so glad you're here. Renee,
Thank you.
You want to go next?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Renee Smith. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm in Tacoma, Washington. I founded a human workplace based on research that I did on love and fear in the workplace a few years ago. And until last night, I also directed, ooh, we're getting a little feedback there. I'm going to pause for just a second. The chat feed said that, Braden, it sounds like your feed might be giving feedback that's buzzing. And could you try muting? There. Is that better? Oops, it's back again. So if you muted it, it worked, and now it's again.
That sounds
Okay.
better. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe Braden, when it's your turn, you can unmute, and then it will be cool. But otherwise, it's giving a lot of static for some reason. So we'll navigate all the ins and outs here. I for several years was in the governor's office directing workplace transformation for the state of Washington, advocating for decreasing fear and increasing love in the workplace and state government agencies, and then also in this organization that I founded, sharing that message across the world. And so now the one business full-time sharing about making work more human. I hold human workplace gatherings and teach people to host human workplace gatherings. And then we're developing a set of tools and resources to support organizations to do that. So that's what I do.
Well, I'm so glad you're here, Renee. And each of you brings a different connection to this topic. And so I'm really looking forward to this panel discussion where we get to explore building people-centric HR from some of your different perspectives. One thought I'm just going to put out front, and then we'll dig into the panel, is that really, if you think about the concept of HR people really building empathy for the employees we serve, and taking that empathy and using it to create a people-centric HR, both in the programs we deliver, as well as the interactions that we manage with our managers and employees. And we're going to talk about both of those things, both the programs and how using design thinking and some of those concepts helps you apply empathy and make it people-centric on a program side, as well as just those interactions that are important with an HR person facing off directly with a manager or an employee. And really both sides of that are included in this people-centric conversation. So with that, I'm going to start out with Damon, who's going to talk through a framework for thinking about building people-centric HR.
Great, thanks, Blythe. So I think, one of the things you said there was, building that empathy for the employee, right? And, I touched on this a little bit, which is, how can we better look at the entire portfolio of offerings and touch points and programs that we're delivering from HR to the employee population? How can we look at how that's received by them and how it's experienced by them? That's really the key, because I think the default is to think about all of these offerings and touch points and programs from our org structure inside of IBM, because that's where we live. But when we truly put ourselves in the shoes of the employee, if we're not intentional about how we're surfacing all of these things to the employees, it can become very fragmented or very noisy or very disjointed. And so there's a lot of things that we can do to really help ourselves, take a look at, the HR experience, but from the outside looking in. Design thinking is an incredible tool to help us do that, at scale, and to really have those activities to really shift our mindsets. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But one of the other concepts that many companies are doing is to try to identify what are these moments that matter. And so, there's a couple frameworks that we can use, and figuring out these moments that matter, or some companies call them moments of impact or moments of truth. But really, it's all the same thing. It's all about, can you identify these moments that we know that employees are going to have, and how can we be very intentional about designing for and delivering really great moments in these cases? Because these moments that matter, by identifying them, some of the criteria you can use are, do they have an outsized impact on an employee's overall experience? And so if we get these moments right, it elevates, their whole experience, even outside of that moment. Or if we get them wrong, it'll really drag down how they perceive their overall experience. And so, these moments matter both to the company, but also, because of that, sort of that outsized impact, but more importantly, they matter to the employee. And so one of the things that we did was to come up with a small framework that we could use to identify these moments. And I'll talk you through that. I have a great slide. I'll talk it through, and then I think we'll be able to share it afterwards. And we realized that these moments, they do exist in larger journeys, but even just identifying these moments that matter, these moments that have an outsized impact is key. And so the framework that we came up with, and this is, each company should do what's best for them. But one way that we thought about it, we're kind of dividing them into two main categories: these signature experiences, and these are what we call the balloon moments. So these signature experiences that either we know every single employee is going to have. So for example, the day one onboarding experience. That's a very emotionally charged moment for every employee. So we need to really get that one right. Or similarly, there could be these other signature experiences, but maybe not every employee has them. So that could be, maybe a moment around a company being acquired, or an award or recognition moment. But these signature experiences, the first category, we call these the balloon moments. So if employees are going home and they're talking with their friends and their family about, that experience they had that day, that means we probably got it right. We want them to celebrate these moments. We want them to talk about them and to have such a great experience that, it's driving this engagement and this socialization. So then the second category that we came up with are what we call kind of these everyday moments that matter. So what are those experiences or moments that employees kind of hit more regularly, that we really need to reduce as much friction as possible so that they can get through those moments? Whatever the need is that they have, they can achieve it really quickly and get back to their regular role where they're really driving value for the business. And so when you think about, using a travel system or filing expense reports or doing some required learning, these are all of these everyday moments that we really want to kind of move employees through in a frictionless and simple experience as possible. And so here it's almost the opposite. If employees are going home and they're talking to their friends and their family about those kinds of moments, that means we probably got them wrong. So that's really the difference here. But by focusing on these signature moments or having these frictionless everyday moments, it has a downstream effect in that it can drive business outcomes. So on the signature experience side, by creating these moments that really drive engagement, we can increase retention and attraction of new candidates. We can drive engagement numbers up, and we can also increase work productivity. And then by reducing the friction of these everyday moments and getting those as simple and streamlined as possible, we can reduce a lot of costs. So things like employee time, manager time, HR investment, HR time, technical costs, we can really drive business outcomes in that way. So again, I would say the thought here is really think about what are those moments at your company that truly matter to your employees, those emotionally charged moments, and how can we really hone in on them first? It's a great first step to really start elevating your employee experience practice.
So Damon, I love this framework. It's so approachable and simple in layman's terms around what is really a complex idea. So I'm curious what you and others on the panel can think about in terms of ways of identifying those moments for HR companies. So potentially at IBM, there's a group of people doing that, or there's surveys, or just what are some of the processes to help identify what those moments are that have an outsized impact, as you said. And really,
my answer, but if anybody wants to chime in first, that would be great.
Go for it.
Okay. I would say, we tend to take a look at two criteria. It's, what are those moments that drive business value? And then what are those moments that employees report as being very high in their priority list? And so by balancing those 2 points of view, it really helps us prioritize out of all the moments, touch points, programs out there, which ones really elevate to the top from a priority list, either a business priority or a user priority. And when we can meet the needs of both of those, that's really where the magic happens. And so I think some other places you can get some ideas are if you do an annual engagement survey, there's a lot of great opportunities that become identified there. One of the other things that we did was a pretty deep user research study just on employee and manager experience. And there we actually, asked a lot of probing questions to really suss out like which moments or which programs did employees feel most strongly about. And so that's another activity you can do if you have a good research practice.
One of the things I'm thinking about is how many of those moments are pivot around some kind of change. When I talk to people about experiences that they had that created fear for them, change was a top source of fear, and specifically not being sort of guided through or given good orientation to how to navigate change in a positive way. And so, change comes in all sorts of versions: the change of being new, the change of into a new role, the change with a new manager, new technology, transitions in the workplace of different kinds, being acquired. All those things, those change moments seem like would be ripe for, having embedded in them moments that matter, like you're talking about, Damon.
Yeah.
And I think
that's
one
a great
thing to add to that is that, a lot of times these moments, in addition to it being a job that somebody's trying to get done, as they're trying to get that done, they do have a lot of that fear and that anxiety, and that's not only preventing them from doing their work and as they try to solve getting that job done, but if they don't get that job done well, then they are not fully engaged in their work and they're not able to be fully productive because that fear and that anxiety lingers.
Yeah, and just to also add to that, there's also the experience that comes with pain points. There's some echo. The pain points that the employees also experience. For me, there are also areas of opportunity for HR, an area of opportunity for us to innovatively look at how we can solve that pain point. So for instance, it could be a particular process that is very bureaucratic and very administrative. It's a pain point to that employee. The moment where they are feeling intense pain, anxiety, they're not excited, HR can step in and see how this moment is important for you. How can I solve that pain point? So it's really looking at our processes. Do I bring in technology to enhance the experience you would feel so you don't have that pain anymore? So pain points are also areas of opportunity for us in HR where the moments that matters can be identified.
Yeah.
Hi, sorry, I lost the technology for a minute. So a question that came up from the group that kind of follows this train of thinking is, Damon, you had mentioned employee engagement measures potentially being a way to figure out those moments that matter, which does seem like a really logical place. The question from Brandon Lara was, is that a reactive
I think,
way, or is there some way to be more proactive?
As you get more and more mature in your employee experience
that?
practice, you can do things like, employee listening, and you can start to get inference based on data and traffic. That's always very helpful from a proactive point of view. I think another great resource to get some proactive insight is to partner with your employee solution center or manager solution center, whatever the support experience is like for your employees. There is a wealth of information in that call data and that call traffic to really understand those patterns of what do people need help with, or what are they calling to get supported by. And that can be another great way to get some proactive pointers into places that may need some love and some investment from an employee experience perspective.
I really like you talking about the love and investment that comes, like that the data should then trigger digging in further. What I'm sitting with is, last night, again, being my last day as an employee with the state, I happened to, complete the exit interview survey, which had all of the employee engagement questions that I'm so familiar with. And I was completing them thinking, oh, wait a second, there's nuance here. I know these questions and I know why they're being asked, but my answer to this question doesn't really say the thing that I would want to say. It's not as simple as the question. So I had to really think about, how can I answer this in a way that's going to give better data. I was thinking, gosh, I really want to talk to somebody about what's underneath this, right? So those are like a doorway into that next thing that we need to be able to, the next level of engagement that needs to be prompted.
That was just.
So using that framework, sorry, Braden, I was going to go to you, is that using that framework, I'd love to explore some of these moments in a little more depth. So one of the ones we're going to talk about is onboarding. And so I know Renee touched on offboarding, but starting maybe at the beginning of the journey and talking a little bit about that onboarding journey and how you set up that moment to really align the person to the organization quickly and effectively. So do you want to talk a little bit about
there's a number of different things
your example
to think
on that?
about and to consider. There's a lot of data points out there in regards to onboarding and its importance to retention, or how difficult retention is, especially in this day and age. And so, the average number for churn that I found across industries was 13% a year, which seemed kind of low. So I imagine someone out there probably has better data, but some other data, just starting with some data points that I found, was that it takes 51 days on average to fill an IT position, and it costs 38% of the annual salary. So if somebody's making $100,000 a year, then that's $38,000 a year that you're spending as a company every time you're looking to fill a role. And then really surprising data information that I found, just to start with some interesting things, was that the average lifespan of an employee at Google is only 13 months, and Apple does a little bit better at 24 months. So it's really important to get that onboarding right, and try to make it a little more successful in keeping people around and keeping that intellectual property inside the organization. And what I see is, as we try to build more of a people-centric approach to onboarding, one thing is to think of it more as a conversation and a dialogue and a relationship than as a program function. So oftentimes most organizations will think of it as we have recruiting, and there's people that do recruiting, and then we have onboarding, and onboarding begins after we hire somebody, and it begins on day one. When if you think of that as more of a continuum, that onboarding begins from the time that somebody starts determining whether or not you're an employer of choice for them, then you can start to craft a completely different onboarding experience that goes from, you know, day minus 100 or whatever the time frame is that they start considering your company to the time that they start to be part of your company. And then there starts to be some technologies that you can introduce, and also some different HR approaches that you can take to make that more of a people-centric approach. So I'm sure many of you that interact with marketing and sales may be familiar with the function of customer success manager. And an increasing number of companies are starting to create roles called employee success managers, whose job is to try to help the employees navigate through some of these processes like onboarding, to help them be successful, to stay engaged, to keep engaged throughout their lifespan, and to achieve their goals not just on day one, but on as they progress through their employee journey. And so, you know, if you think about the role of somebody like an employee success manager, there's human-to-human contact in those kinds of roles, but we can also use technology as well to create conversation. And so, you know, technologies like the Oracle solution around human capital management have digital assistants built in that are not, you know, your typical chat bot where you ask a question and get an answer that's like an FAQ, but you can actually have a conversation with it. So, for example, say you just had a baby. You could bring up the digital assistant on your phone and say, I just had a baby. And then the chat, the digital assistant would say, oh, congratulations. You know, did you have one, or did you have twins or triplets? And then it can interact with you and say, oh, well, given that you just had a child, do you want to make changes to your benefits? And then it would guide you through the benefits process. Do you want to make changes to your tax elections? And it will guide you through that process. And so it's not just, you know, a question and an answer that's been canned, but you can actually have a conversation with the person that may have had a life-changing event. Or as they're onboarding, if somebody is on day 3 of their onboarding and there's certain trainings that they still haven't taken that they need to take, it may prompt them on their phone and then give them the option of, hey, I noticed you haven't taken these 3 trainings yet. Would you like to try to take one today? And yes. And then which one of these would you like to take? Oh, I want to take the employee benefits course. And then, oh, well, it's offered 3 times today. Which time would you like to take? And it'll guide you through the process. And so I think that as we look at our onboarding process, the key is to think about it through the employee's eyes, or the candidate's eyes, if you expand your lens, but then also what information and when is that information relevant? I think, you know, in the old days, you would get like a binder on day 1 and somebody would show you a cubicle and you sit in your cubicle and then, you know, you try to figure out your way those first few days. And then we kind of advanced to having a portal where all the information is there, but good luck trying to find it. And to now we can use technologies to have more conversation, to create 0 user interfaces that allow people to interact with the information as they need it, when they need it, and to guide them through the process of onboarding in a more personal way, tailored to the role. And we can analyze the questions that people are asking, either via call center or through a digital assistant, to see, you know, if you record the calls and you run machine learning through the calls, you can start to see some of the phrases that come up and help to identify some of those moments that are particularly painful, and then work to redesign your process to be more human-centric.
We've got some great questions from the chat on this, or comments really. One of the questions is, how do you get the business or the operations managers and teams to support the onboarding process?
Well, I think you.
So Robin
yes,
mentioned that this is a challenge for her in a manufacturing
to understand
context.
what are the key things that people need to have to be fully productive, and what are the sort of stretch goals as people start to be minimally productive and then fully productive, and then optimally productive. You work with the people that know those jobs the best to try to identify what information people need to have, what kinds of interactions they need to have, and when is the most appropriate time to introduce those, because a lot of times things build upon each other, and if you don't have the foundational elements, you can't understand a more advanced concept. And so you work with the people who have gone through that process and that know it, and not just the tenured people, but the recent people that have gone through the experience most recently, so that they have a more accurate understanding, because they've gone through it recently, of what that kind of knowledge acquisition looks like.
One other thought on here, and I'm curious from the rest of the panel as well, is just thinking about how onboarding starts at the point of offer or in the hiring process. So there's a couple comments here in the chat about that. Any thoughts about examples where
So,
hiring and
one way
onboarding were
that you
connected
can do it
really well
is
together
to have
in terms of
like
creating
an
that
augmented
moment?
reality type thing on your phone, that as people are going through the onboarding process, or as they come to a career event, that you can use things like visual reality to help people take a walk around your environment and have them interact with characters within that environment that can provide key information. Or if somebody's really excited about joining your company, then you can create an augmented reality type thing that as they're walk up to the building, they can get information that might be useful to candidates. And on day one, as they're walking around, you can enhance your physical environment with information in a contextual way. So there's lots of different things. And then also distributing, having a communication trickle campaign to trickle information out to people as well.
I think the other thing that sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, the other thing that I guess I want to call out is that, so the balance where we can leverage technology in all these powerful ways that are being described, and the need for employees to sit down face-to-face with managers and team members to build relationships and connections, human to human. And one of the stories that I think of is a powerful experience where like a team was onboarding a whole bunch of new people, uptaking their business, and the burden of that's a lot of work to bring on a bunch of new people, but that investment was made to spend time, to connect. One woman described it as sitting in the coffee shop in the comfy chairs, getting to know each other, and the power of that. That the manager took them out to show them where to park, because parking was a thing. And that like all of that built this sense of connection and interdependence, so that months later, when they had to have a really difficult, challenging conversation about implicit bias and diversity and inclusion and the training that they were providing, they cited that first day on the job as the source of their ability, like the foundation of their ability to build their connection and their relationships as a team and to have those conversations. So I think we're in a really right time where we can leverage the kinds of technology and ability to get, help people know the things that they need to know expediently, like Braden's describing, and then coupling that with, good human to human contact that's going to make us able to work better together. So.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And Blythe, I just wanted to throw one quick thought in, which to your question of how do you get recruiting and onboarding sort of working together, on a kind of shared experience. One of the things I think is incredibly powerful is to reframe the goal or the outcome from the employee's point of view. So when we think about onboarding, I think Braden kind of touched on it. By reframing it from the employee's point of view, what we did is we said the goal is the IBMer needs to feel welcome and ready to work at IBM. Like that's our goal. And so by reframing it that way, having them feel welcome and ready to work goes all the way from day one minus 60, right? All the way to, maybe even weeks after day one, and before they're ready to work, at IBM and kind of up to full capacity. So by reframing the goal or the outcome from the employee's need, then the different, the multi-functional teams can really start to see a shared goal across the different teams, and that can be really effective.
So with that, we're gonna go to another example. And so we've talked a little bit about onboarding as an example and some ways to approach that. The next example was going to be another moment that really matters for employees in the business is the performance conversation. And so Lara was going to give us an example of how to think about designing that in a people-centric way, kind of the new way of doing performance management.
We are saddled with a task that our employee life cycle is optimal our business results. If we put in people-centric approach into how we manage performance management, that would change a whole lot of things for us. And it's really around us changing, it starts from us changing the way we think about our HR processes. You know, we need to switch our thoughts from the traditional approach of, oh, this is my performance management process. I need to set my KPIs, set priorities, I need to measure, then I need to deliver. We need to shift away from that thinking to understand that that approach is no longer sustainable in the same world of work because of the increase in the level of technology connection that we have in today's workplace. And we need to begin to look at things differently using the design thinking approach, just like Damon had mentioned, to understand the moment that matters at each of these processes within our performance management cycle. To understand each moment by asking the right question through reframing. So for instance, if I have a principle, right, that I usually recommend, and that starts from one, understanding that your people matter. The approach that we use to treat our external customers, we need to bring that in and begin to treat our employees as our internal customer. So as business leaders, usually we are focused on what does our customer want? How do we meet the needs of our customer? How do we identify those moments that matter and deliver solution based on what they want so we can, of course, increase our business imperatives? So we need to bring that approach in using design thinking. How do we do that? Now, the first approach is understanding the journey, which is understanding the why. Why are we doing this? So our performance management usually starts with understanding what is our strategic intent and direction, what are the principles as well that the organization wants to achieve. Now we need to put people at the middle of this principle. It's not design principles, then we envelope it around people and say, this is the principle you it. No, it's more around co-creating. So this is the principle around our people. How do we co-create with our people to achieve actionable points, putting into consideration moments that matters for them to enable us win together? It is all co-creating with people as we design our performance management process. So take, for instance, let's look at the first step to performance management is setting KPIs, defining responsibility, setting expectations, understanding what the goals are, and developing measurable outcomes. If we want to approach this with a design thinking perspective, is one, if I'm setting responsibility for my employee, what is that moment that matters to them? One, they want to be clear where I'm headed to. They don't want to be told, this is the target, you run with it. They want to feel a sense of belonging that would enable us create that connection to say, this is where we are headed as an organization. This is what matters. How do we co-create? What are your strengths? What do you bring on board to enable us achieve this as an organization? In that moment is in the kind of conversation that we have with people. How do we reframe the conversation? Changing the confirmation from telling them to engaging them, to let's collaborate, reframing it, asking questions that spurs them to think, to own the process. So for instance, while we reframe, we use questions like, how might we achieve this expectation that we need to deliver as an organization? That moment of clarity, that moment of ownership, that moment of making them feel trusted to have the right capability to deliver this. That is us as HR putting people centricity into how we approach our performance management process. So if we are setting goals, we are co-creating the goals together. We're asking the right kind of question that spots them to bring on board their commitment into what is expected of them. And that addresses the first level of performance management, which is setting KPIs, goals, and strategy. Then the next level is the point where we are assessing, so at that point, we are having meaningful conversation. It's not waiting till the end of your performance cycle before you have a meaningful forward-thinking conversation with your team members. It's you having the ongoing forward-thinking on time, real time, giving feedback on time, right? Giving them that sense of belonging and care. If I work with a manager who cares about me, not just to deliver on the job, but to ensure that I have the right capability, I have the right skills, and of course I have a thriving environment, right? That would enable us as HR people be more people-centric. So we are not driving a process to deliver on our business results, but we are working with our people, putting people at the core of our business and trusting them to deliver on the business imperative, working in collaboration with them. And of course, that brings coaching as well into it, based on we're having the reviews, we're giving the feedback, the conversations that we have are forward thinking. Right, so if an employee makes a mistake at work, how do we address that mistake? How do we make them feel at that point? And that's the moment that matters. So an employee makes a mistake, at that moment, you understand how he or she is feeling, and that is us bringing empathy. You are bringing empathy into how you approach, how you deal with that situation upon review. When we bring in empathy, we tend to see things from their own perspective. And of course, we tend to understand things better from their own perspective. And when we prefer solution, or when we solve or deal or handle that situation, we are tackling it from a point of empathy. So that way we are not just blinded to just our side, but we understand things from their own approach. And while we are assessing performance, there's need for coaching on the job as well. Coaching is important, it's critical, because coaching helps them build transformative leadership skills on the job. When they deliver on the job, it's not just about delivering on the job, but are they growing potentially as well on the job? That is us being people-centric as we manage our performance appraisal process. Then the last step is to develop and inspire. And ours is really ensuring that as they deliver on the job, right, we come across as if we care for them. We come across as we are focused on their growth on the job. If there are areas of gaps, we come up with interventions to address that on the job. And on the long run, so it's really how we can create more loyalty as they travel through the employee life cycle within the organization. We keep focus on performance, which helps us ensure that we are more focused towards their growth and how we win together as an organization. Because when your employees are loyal to you, they help you, they make the job a lot easier for you as HR. They don't want to be seen as, oh, I just need to go through this process to deliver, but rather they are winning together with the organization and they are growing together with the organization.
Well, thanks, Lara. I think that gives a nice outline of a people-centric performance management process. A couple things that came up in the chat, so I'm curious what others in the panel would add to this, is I saw some comments about time is always hard in terms of making time for performance reviews. Another one is how to really make sure that it's authentic trust and not just the impression of trust in the process, in that conversation between managers and employees. And then there's also a comment here about how to align to the broader organization, connecting it to that higher level. So really on any of those points, I'd love to hear an example from
I'm going to address the first
from the
question
whole group
around
around
time.
just ways to do those things.
I have mentioned before that we need to move away from the approach of waiting till this end of a performance cycle before we have this forward-thinking conversation on performance. Conversation on performance has to be real time. It has to be meaningful. It has to be forward-thinking, and of course, time comes to play. If you work with a team on a daily basis and there are performance gaps, if you wait to have that conversation to address the performance gaps, by the end of the performance cycle, we can be every 6 months or every 12 months annually. You would have lost time to help that employee close that gap. And that time lost would cost business money. It would cost the business money. We need to move forward to having that conversation real time, regardless of the number of employees that you manage. We need to leverage. We have a lot of internal comms technology now that helps drive this conversation within the organization. Do you have business Skype? Are you on WhatsApp? Are you in touch regularly with your employees? So those conversations have to be real time so that we can mitigate any form of gaps that might cost business money at the end of the day. And now in terms of building authentic trust and not making it look as if it's you just want to just come across as just being care. I think it starts from one trying to understand the power of emotional intelligence at work. As leaders, we need to become emotionally aware of ourselves and our team members. If we are, it helps us to lead them aright. I remember there was a time I was talking to a young manager who was having issues with his subordinates. And we looked at it from a perspective of, okay, in design thinking, it usually elaborates to two. Some people think more with their left brain, some people think more with their right brain. The people who think more with their left brain are more creative, the people who think with their right brain are more logical. So when they have conversations, there's usually clashes. I'm talking from a creative perspective, my other team member is talking from a logical perspective, and there were a lot of friction across the conversations that we're having. But immediately we understood, oh, that is how he thinks. Then we're able to shift the mode of the conversation using questions, using discussions that brought everyone on board, rather than say, this is my thinking, I think we should go with this. We started talking around, this is our thinking, what do you think we should do to align with this? So authenticity can be built if we tend to trust people more at work and show them that we care about them. Because trust comes with your intent. If your employees know that your intent is their performance growth, not just on the business performance growth, but the individual performance growth, yes, they would open up more and trust you. If your employees understand that, yes, you have their best interest at heart, they will trust you. So trust is earned. You don't just demand for trust. It has to do with your leadership. It has to do with what you bring on board. It has to do with how much you care about your people. You will earn their trust authentically without coming across as, faking the trust with them.
Thanks,
then
Laura.
The last question.
Sorry, we're gonna pivot to the last topic because we're kind of getting low on time. So I'd like to make sure we spend a little bit of time on this last example. So we've talked about, Lara walked through performance management, we talked through onboarding, and we talked about a framework for the whole thing. But one of the things we talked about up front was both the program and the interaction side of things. And so this last one is a little bit more that belly to belly interaction level. So Renee, you were going to share a little bit of how to build a people-centric approach to either a personal crisis of an employee or a termination, but a tough, challenging conversation. How do you make those experiences as positive as possible?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So yeah, I want to focus on The moment that matters being when an employee is facing a personal crisis, which is sort of eventually we are all going to face a death in the family, someone with a serious illness, or either our own or someone we're care about, some other kind of hardship that that we have to deal with personally, and that comes with us into the workplace. And what I discovered in my research, asking people to tell me stories about times when they felt afraid at work and what happened, or times when they felt loved at work and what happened, is that this moment can pivot one of those two ways. And how we handle this moment, how we, as leaders, as organizations, or as HR, help folks navigate that is really deterministic. And so we can create fear if we tell employees, I want you to leave home at home and work at work and just come in and do your job, and I don't want to know about any of your personal stuff. We're just here to work, and sort of buckle down, and we don't in any way even acknowledge or want to hear about or engage in any kind of support for that employee. When we do that, we create fear for that employee. We create uncertainty, disengagement, mistrust, isolation, disloyalty. People withhold and draw back. And it's not only for the employee that's being impacted in that moment, it's for everyone else that's watching around them and watching how they're being treated in that crisis. Our indifference to their humanity in that moment is really has long-term impacts on how anything else that we try to do will go on those performance moments, or or any other key moments. But conversely, when in that personal crisis moment, when we can help and be there for each other, and when a manager can be there, when they can allow team members to be there, it can make a huge difference. And people will experience a sense of not being alone, which we have an epidemic of in our society, so better mental health, belonging, feeling valued, creating trust. And that also, of course, has the ability to build more connection and just better productivity and long-term results. In the short term, it's challenging. If you've got someone that's facing a crisis that needs to take time off to care with take a kid to cancer treatments, or for their own, all the different things that can happen, there can be a short-term impact, but the long-term commitment that's built is definitely worth it. And so I think it's on us in HR to help guide leaders to that, to make sure that there's support and policies and all the structures in place, and that leaders are prepared for how they show up in the micro moment of that experience, when somebody comes in and sits down in their chair and looks them in the eye and just needs to tell them, this is what's happening with me, that a leader can handle that moment, that they're prepared as a human for that moment. I've discovered that people don't want to kind of dump all of their stuff all over a team, but they do want to be seen and known, for the most part. There's one woman's story, and I'm going to try to, I'll be really quick because I know our time is running, but one woman's story kind of epitomizes what's so important about this. And she was, this is from my research, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and received that information over the phone at work in her cube, and shared it with her team. And they rallied, and with her leader, and they rallied around her that day, and then over the long term, and provided support and practical support, job, transportation and paperwork and job benefits and FMLA. She had used up all her leave as a single mom who had chosen to have twins as a single person. So she had no leave left, but this organization donated leave so that she never missed a paycheck for a year. And they just did everything to let her know that she was important and that her health came first. And I'll just read you what she said. She said this. She said, "It's hard to take in that much love. They must have valued me, and there must have been something that I'd done, but how could anyone be loved so much? My internal tape said I'm not worthy, but this love had a profound impact on me being alive today. I felt a deep commitment to get well so that I could come back, not just well for my family, but well for my team. I was eager to be part of the work again and honor their commitment and investment in me. I wanted to make work matter more. Making a difference had a deeper meaning. And when I returned, I walked through halls surrounded by people who had carried me. It was a holy ground feeling. These people carried me, and we do important work here, and I want to contribute and really make it count. We're all connected, and you can't ignore that. We all have things that you don't see at work, but we need to hold each other with compassion as we do our important work. so that we can bring ourselves to that work, not just our professional selves, but our whole selves. And that woman went on to, 20 more years with her organization and retired just last year as a, strong contributor. She learned that she was safe, and everyone else in that system learned that they were too. And, it's that moment that we've got to be able to have systems to hold and policies and support in place. And we've, got to have the leaders and teams who can hold that moment because they make all the difference.
Well, what a powerful story, Renee. And if you think about what a great example of a crisis story where empathy, not just from the leader, but the whole team, right? And the impact of that.
Right. Exactly.
So with that, we've covered a lot of ground in our almost an hour together. And after the session, we're going to be sending out a set of resources and posting so that there's some more content for these amazing people that were part of this discussion that can share from their practice. So with that, I just want to say thanks to everybody who joined the conversation, and I hope you got some really great ideas about how to think about both the program empathy side of this, as well as that individual interaction piece and how you set up your HR and your managers to make those moments matter, as Damon said. So thanks, Damon, Lara, Renee, Braden, and to everybody that joined. Have an awesome rest of the day in this awesome conference that Enrique has set up. And go get them, people-centric, right? So thanks, everybody.
Yeah.